Hi, hope everybody is well. Thanks so much for your continued support and so glad you're here. Please like and subscribe, it really helps. So, a distinct change from the last video. This time, testing equipment with original audiophile LPs rather than reissues. This is a much different kettle of fish. We have to consider availability, price, a good pressing, and most important, a near mint record. So what's different compared to the modern reissues I used as test records in the last video? My choices are because I love the music, the performance, and the recording. I'm not a collector. I settle on one favorite recording and search for it, and sometimes have to save for it. I'm looking for transparency and original intent and the story that is telling me to help me test my equipment. It turns out that EMI, Decca, Mercury, and RCA engineers really knew how to balance an orchestra. So let's begin with this one. This is an internally happy record. This is Borodin's Symphony No. 2, played by the London Symphony Orchestra with Jean Martineau. This is an original RCA Victor Shaded Dog living stereo. This is LSC 2298. And the reason I chose this one is, well, I just love the music. Written by actually, Borodin was actually a chemist first and foremost before he was a composer, a part-time composer. But a wonderful piece. If you have this recording, you know how beautiful it is. One of the reasons I use it is because I want to see how the inner grooves work and how does my cartridge and arm and turntable track it. You can see it goes down. I'm not sure through my plastic there. If you can see, it goes down to really a very, very, very short lead-out groove. And so they've got the whole symphony on one side. And there's no distortion on it from what I can hear. But I've played it on lesser systems, and I've heard some stuff. So I use that straight away. If I'm testing a cartridge, that's my first one up to see if you can track that. But it's worth it just to get it for the performance and the recording, which was in Kingsway Hall by Kenneth Wilkinson. And it's magnificent. Yeah, I think the median price is $50 on Discogs for a Indianapolis pressing, which is this one. Next up, obviously for piano, is another living stereo. This is a Rockaway pressing. I think it's 1S. But Rockaway is not quite as good as Indianapolis, but it's very, very good. This is the Chopin Ballades by Rubinstein. This is LSC 2370. Not the world's greatest recording. Sometimes I prefer piano recordings on compact disc. But what I'm listening for, I should say, is absolute pitch stability. And nothing gives you pitch stability like piano. So if we're listening to the recording, and I'm listening through my cartridges and through the arms and the turntables, I'm listening to how does it handle pitch. The pitch on this record is very, very good. Again, it's a Shaded Dog, and it's a low stamper, but it's a Rockaway pressing. And you're not going to get any better for Chopin than Arthur Rubinstein. And the ballades are just beautiful. The first one, G minor, is just a knockout piece. This is one of my absolute favorite records, fairly new to my collection. This is an original EMI, Massenet Le Cid, the ballet music. Once you've heard this piece, you'll know it. You'll never forget it. It starts off with beautiful flutes and castanets, and then loud orchestras and cymbals. And I'm listening for the orchestral recording and how does the system handle the recording. And I'll give you some background. Louis Fremeau was the conductor of the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. And they recorded in Birmingham Town Hall, which is a lovely looking hall, but it's a bit of a barn. And I think the engineer on this recording was Stuart Eltham. He did a very good job controlling the reverberation. So what you get is a beautiful orchestral record, and lots of splashy cymbals and beautiful flutes and castanets, but it's controlled. So that's what I'm listening for. And can the system handle it? I do have the Greensleeves version of this. That's the EMI Greensleeves, the mid-range. It's also very good, but it's not as good as this. Some of the websites around were telling me that the Greensleeves is nearly as good or as good. And it is very good. But there's so many little tells on this record that show you the superiority of the original. And it's an interesting label too. Columbia Studio 2 stereo, but EMI. But that's a fantastic record if you can get it. I'm not sure what the median price is for this on Discogs, but it's up there because there are not that many available. I think I got mine on eBay, and I think it was $100. So not cheap, but a magnificent recording. This is a very interesting record. I've talked about this before on some of my videos. Let me get the glare out for you. This is an Argo recording, which is a subsidiary of Decca. And this is the Academy of St. Mars in the Fields with Neville Mariner, so you're guaranteed a great sounding record and a great performance. And this is American music. And you're thinking bass, you know, Adagio for strings, these small pieces by Henry Cowell, hymn and fuguing tune number 10, which is beautiful, and Paul Creston, Aruma, a very short scherzo-like piece. Quiet City is just that. Trumpet and cor anglais, beautiful with strings. And the Eye of Symphony number 3 is not one of his modern ones. It's a very tuneful symphony, quite short. So why am I doing bass on this? Well, let me tell you a little story about this. When I got this record, I've had it for a long time. As my system has got better, and the tone arm's better, and the speakers are better, and the integrated amplifier is better, I would hear this on different recordings, and it sounded great. On different setups. It sounded great, wonderful, then it would sound even better, and eventually I got to the system that I have now. And I hadn't listened to it for about 5 or 10 years. And one day I'm listening, and I hear this very, very low rumble somewhere. And they recorded it in a very common space in London for recordings called St. John Smith Square, which is a beautiful old church, ex-church, now a concert hall, right by Westminster, and situated in a square just off the embankment, which is, I'm not sure if it's Westminster Road, but it's the embankment right by the Thames. It's very busy. And they like to record very early in the morning. So the recording session would start. And, you know, once in a while through the pieces, and they're quite quiet, I would hear this incredibly low rumble. Lower than the rumble at Kingsway with the London Tube going underneath. And I finally figured out what it was, because I've done a lot of concerts at St. John Smith Square. I've walked from Westminster's tube station to do recordings there and to do concerts there many, many, many times. And as you're walking and turning right into the square from the embankment, there's a light. And the light is, the road is very busy. And what the rumble is very early in the morning. In England, they call them heavy goods vans. These are people delivering all the vegetables and the fruits and vegetables and the meat to different places. And as they move off, when the light turns green, they rev the engines a little bit, and you get this very, very low rumble. And that's what it is. And it's trucks going by. It doesn't happen very often. And I'm not sure if the engineers were hearing it, but we certainly hear it. So if you want to get that record and you want to test your bass out, a subwoofer will pick it up, but I don't do subwoofers. But if you do subwoofers, they'll pick it up, even not a very good subwoofer. But if you're just listening on a really nicely balanced system and you want to hear if the bass is doing what you think it should be doing, that's a great record to choose. Again, it's Argo. The number is ZRG845. You can get this for like 10 or 15 bucks on Discogs. It's not expensive. It's a fantastic recording though. This one I chose for specific reasons, mainly because of the first piece on side 1, which is Serenade to Music by Ralph Vaughan Williams. Serenade to Music was written for Henry Wood for his birthday, for it to be sung at the proms, the BBC proms. Every summer they have the concert series. And he wrote it for 16 specific voices, professional voices. So it is not cheap to put on, I'm telling you. 4 sopranos, 4 altos, 4 tenors, and 4 basses. And it is one of the most beautiful pieces that Vaughan Williams ever wrote. You don't have to be English to love it, but it does help. It's also coupled with Symphony No. 5, which is a beautiful, beautiful symphony. Aaron Copland, a fine composer, should have known better, but he said, listening to Symphony No. 5 by Vaughan Williams is like watching cows eat grass. I do not agree, although it was pretty funny. But I use Serenade to Music because Voices are so challenging to record, especially the female voice, the chest tones that females use. Males as well, but the female voice is very challenging, especially when it gets very high. So when we got 16 of the world's best singers, all professionals, belting out some beautiful music, if your cartridge, your integrated amplifier, and your speakers can decipher all those lines of music, you know you've got a good happening system. So that's a great record. Again, it's cheap as chips, maybe $10, $5, and this is an EMI, and it's the number is ASD 2538. There you go. Postage stamp EMI, again, $10, $15, and you know, the music, it's very, very beautiful. Got two for strings now. For string tone, first of all, ensemble string tone. This is another beautiful Argo. I got this for $5 in some used record store. It's still not that much on Discogs. It's recorded in the late 60s from Argo, and probably St. John's Square, what I was talking about. These are the string sonatas by Rossini. Rossini wrote them when he was very, very young. They're beautifully played. What I like about them is I want to hear the string tone, because it's not that it's not complicated, because the music is beautifully produced for basically a teenager. But the intonation is perfect. It's a small string section. It's very beautifully played. It's very delicate. And I'm listening for the kind of sound it produces on different systems. And this really sounds good on tubes. I have an Olnick tube preamp. And boy, when that's in the system, it sounds gorgeous. A little less so on solid state, but still very beautiful. And this is one of my all-time favorite records. This is a blueback, London blueback. This is about $100 on Discogs. It's not plentiful. It's by Alfredo Campoli with the London Symphony and Audiophile Argente. So superstar conductor. Campoli is an amazing violinist. I actually worked with Mr. Campoli when he was in his 70s. I did a tour around England playing different pieces, and he was, first of all, a lovely man, very kind, but had high standards. But boy, his playing, even in his late 70s, was incredible. And this record is like dynamite. The violin tone is gorgeous. It's a Kingsway Hall recording, late 50s. I'm not sure if it was Kenneth Wilkinson, but it's a glorious record. But the string tone of Mr. Campoli and the orchestra is just beautiful. And it's Tchaikovsky. It's a great concerto. And there's lots of great Tchaikovsky concertos around, but if you can get that one just to have in your collection, it's absolutely spectacular. This one I used for voices and imaging. And this is the great EMI Sax 52, 58. This one was not cheap, about $160 on Discogs. This is a first pressing stereo, Columbia, which is EMI. And this is the great Elizabeth Schwarzkopf singing the Four Last Songs by Richard Strauss, which she does absolutely magnificently. It's taken me a long time to get used to her voice. For the longest time, I did not like her performance. I thought it was too light. But as I've got older and studied the music more, I've grown to love this performance and this actual record. This is, I wrote a post on Instagram where can you actually fall in love with a record? Because I'm in love with this record. It was worth, you know, if it was $300, I'd have bought it. Now there is an ERC version, Electric Recording Company, about $500. I'd like to hear that. But this is really special. What I love about this record is the way it's recorded, and her husband, Walter Legg, was the producer. He owned EMI. And how her voice just comes out of the middle of the orchestra, yet it's perfectly positioned and mic'd. I'm not sure where it was recorded, which hall is in Berlin, with the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra, with George Sell. But it's magnificent. And just to hear her voice floating, and boy, if you had the right equipment, again, beautiful on tube equipment, but it also sounds wonderful with my MBL integrated amplifier. If you're going to get a solid state integrated amplifier, It's very expensive, but it's a wonderful piece. The N51 integrated amplifier by MBL. Anyway, this is a wonderful record to test the imaging and how it replicates the voice. She had a very specific voice, much lighter than Jesse Norman's version, but it's just as intense and powerful, if that makes sense. And if the recording, if the stereo does its job properly, you get that intensity, even though it's kind of a light sound. That's a total masterpiece of a record, by the way. There it is. And the last two, I just used because I just love the sound of the orchestra more than anything. And these are two incredible orchestral records. One is another blueback. This is Karajan's Planets, Holst The Planets, from I think it was the early 60s, maybe late 50s, done in Vienna, probably at the Sophiensaal. This is CS6244, so it's pressed and made in England, even though it's a blueback with London on it. This is a magnificent hi-fi disc, if you want to call it that. And everything is in balance. And if the beginning planets, Mars, you know, it can get very thick and syrupy and very, very loud. And your system has to decipher that. And this is not like one of those bang-up SACD jobs that they've fiddled around with and can get a good sound. This is an old record. And if the system does it right, you're ahead of the game. So Holst The Planets, do not, under any circumstances, get his remake with the Berlin Phil on Dutch gramophone. A, the recording is awful, and he was doing his typical fiddling. But also the playing, the very beginning, there's a unison between the euphonium and the trombones and the bassoons that is hideously out of tune. And they should have retaken it. But, you know, as Mr. Karajan get older, like all of us, the ears don't act the same way. And of course, is there a producer that's going to go up and say, Maestro, the orchestra was not good. He's not going to do that. So they left it in, and it's not good. So just ignore that performance. This one is magnificent. And the Vienna Philharmonic probably didn't even know the piece that well. They play the hell out of it. And my final choice is the Scheherazade, which we had a shootout the other day with Ryan K. Smith's Analog Productions cut, which is wonderful. This is equally wonderful. This is the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. This is an original EMI, the ASD, the cream and red label, which I just loved, ASD 251. Not cheap, also about $150 in this condition. This is near mint on Discogs. And I get this one because some of the large orchestral passages on the Reiner RCA Shaded Dog get a little congested, and you know, Ryan did an amazing job on his recut, but the congestion is still there a little bit. It's just on the original tape. There's nothing you can do about it. Whereas this one is incredibly transparent. It may not be quite as dynamic as the Reiner, but it's equally musical with an orchestra in fantastic shape. It was a hand-picked orchestra by Beecham in these days. They were contracted to him. They couldn't play for anybody else. But in the beginning, the first movement, when it gets pretty loud, when the sea in Sinbad's ship, when he's out on the ocean having fun, it gets very loud and it gets very thick, the orchestration. And this recording is so transparent that if your system is tuned properly and set up properly, you can see right through the middle of the orchestra. It's another Kingsway recording. I think it's Kenneth Wilkinson. Kingsway was magic until they tore it down to build a hotel. What a shame. Anyway, that's a winner of a recording, fantastic piece, and one of the top 2 recordings. So that's it. There are my 10 records, originals, audiophile pressings, that I use to tune my system or when I'm reviewing new equipment. So thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate your time. Again, if you get a chance to like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate that. Thanks so much again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.